Okay, welcome back. We're on page 15 talking about those things that make projects successful. There's a table on the next page, table 1, 2, that talks about here are basically the things that are going to be the secrets to success. Do you have top level support for the project? I mentioned to you guys before that I had an example of a project that I did, and the real major stakeholder did not want the project to occur, and it was like forced upon them. And so it was miserable. They were very happy with the system they had, but somebody from some higher organization came down and said, "No, you have to change." And so we put in this new process that everyone hated, and it was a miserable project. So executive support. If the executives come out and say, "By God, I'm for this," then everyone else will snap too. User involvement. If you don't keep them involved, here's a classic example. Let's say you have one particular person who's kind of a grumpy person to begin with, right? And they never like anything. I don't like the way this works. So you pick that person and you put them on the team and say, "Now show me how you want this thing to work." Okay? And so they actually help design like the user interface. Okay, when you're done, they are not going to complain about the project because they helped build the dang thing. Okay. User involvement. You have to have a clear business objective and hopefully measurable. You can't just say, "Well, we're doing this to get more sales." That's not a clear objective. I'm sorry, it needs to be better than that. So some sort of clear business objective. Emotional maturity, I kind of like that one. You can read up on that little section. But basically, there's an awful lot of emotions involved in this thing. And yeah, you got to do the right thing. In fact, we're going to be talking about, the ethics part of this coming up a little bit later. Optimizing the scope. What is the scope of the project and how do you manage the scope? How do you allow in good ideas in the process? And then you get to some certain point where you say, "Oh man, that's a great idea, but man, you should have come to us 6 months ago with that idea because it's kind of too late now." So how do you do that? How do you do that without sounding like you're a total cad? The agile process. We haven't described what agile is, but agile is a technique that you can use to build a product faster than a traditional step-by-step process where you get people in and say, "Okay, here's what we got. What do you think?" And so Agile is fantastic for getting very, very high quality products. For example, I would imagine, I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine that Apple, when they produce, some of their iPhone products, probably are using Agile or something similar to that, where they're making dang sure that you're going to be totally wowed by the project. It's not just going to be, "Well, we met the specifications." It's going to be, beautiful. It's going to be, gorgeous interface. It's going to be everything you ever wanted and more. So Agile is how you would go about making sure that happens. And by the way, Agile typically throws out time and cost, scope. Okay. Did you have project management expertise before you started this project? Oh yeah, that's a key to success. Skilled resources. Did you get the right kind of people to work on your team? I mentioned, for example, I really wanted Sally to be on my team, but all I could get was Bob. And Bob is okay, but he ain't the best database person in the world. I really wanted Sally. So did you get the right kind of people? How did the execution of the project go? And then lastly, oddly enough, is the tools and infrastructure, which is what we're going to be spending a great deal of time on. So once again, the number one key to success is whether or not the senior people on your organization want this thing to succeed. If they want it to succeed, oh yeah, the game is won. The game is won if you got that far. Okay, let's continue. So in addition to this, they talk about some other things. The other things is like the Army or the federal government talks about what they think the three major success factors. One is adequate funding. Yeah, but of course they would say that. Staff experience, that's basically the same thing as number 8 here. And then engagement from all stakeholders. Yeah, that's like 1 and 2 combined together. Yeah, it's all the same. So they talk about the best practices. I kind of like this list. So the best practices for making sure a project goes well is to use one of those integrated toolboxes, one of those super tools that we're going to be using. That would be a good best practice. Grow your project leaders. Maybe you've got to have a bunch of people on your team that are kind of junior, but make sure that they get experience in how to run projects so that you could farm them off and they could be project managers in some other locations. Excellent idea. Develop a streamlined project delivery system. Let's say you're a software house and you produce games, okay? In theory, you should have a way to set up a team to produce a game so you can produce another game after that and another game after that. And in theory, you've got it all figured out, right? I mean, you know exactly how long it's going to take. You've done this 3 or 4 times, and so you can get better and better and better at it by just having that kind of experience. Then measure your project health using metrics. There was a saying in my business when I did this for a living 10 million years ago, is if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. Okay? You can't have a goal that says better customer satisfaction. Okay. How did you measure that? Oh, well, we didn't. Well, then strike that goal. If you can't measure it, it don't exist. Now, if you want to go out and do a survey of your customers before and then do a survey of your customers after, now you've got metrics. But you just can't make up stuff and say, well, I'm gonna this project is gonna improve customer satisfaction. Oh yeah? Prove it. So metrics are the way you do that. Okay. On page 17, they talk about program and project portfolio management. I know there's a lot of P's in that word. Anyway, so what is a program? So on page 17, a program is basically the grouping of related things together. How many tasks does it take to build a house? I mean, millions. But you could stack them up and group them together so that kind of makes a little bit more sense. In the example they're using, an IT example, they talk about infrastructure things. Okay, your project's going to require a new server. So yeah, there's going to be some tasks associated with installing a new server. It's going to have some application developer where you're going to have to go hire a bunch of programmers to develop the application. Then you're going to have an end user support organization. So quite frankly, it's probably not the same people, right? The people who set up the server are not going to be the programmers, and the programmers are not going to be doing the help desk. These are probably 3 separate organizations. So it kind of makes sense, for programs to be, grouped together related tasks. I mean, this is not rocket surgery. It just kind of makes sense. So then they talk about portfolio management versus project management, and they kind of go off on a wild tangent here for just a minute. But look, here's the takeaway. The takeaway is the projects are these short-term things, like build me a such and such. And they're just designed to meet whatever the tactical goals are, the short-term goals for whatever. Now, portfolio management is all about these long-term strategic goals. Now, let me give you a classic example of what we're talking about. Several years ago, when Microsoft decided to get into the gaming console business, right, the Xbox, their tactical goal, right, they knew that when they first developed this thing, they were going to lose money. Yes, they come up and said, we're going to lose $100 on every unit sold in the first year. But we're going to enter the gaming market with a bang. We're going to have, best of breed hardware and super duper software and exclusive titles and all the rest of this stuff so that later we're going to be making an awful lot of profit. So the tactical goal was not to make profit. That was not the tactical goal. That was the strategic goal. Long term, they wanted profit. But that first year, no way. Okay, so that's kind of the difference between a project management or portfolio management. Basically, portfolio management is all about the financial part, okay? The strategic goals. In fact, the portfolio manager isn't necessarily someone who does projects for a living. They could be completely different people. This could be, the CIO or CFO or one of these people higher up in the organization that says, I think we need to get into the gaming console business. And he doesn't run the project at all. It probably has no experience running the project. He's a finance kind of guy. Okay? All right, good. The next thing to talk about is when you're doing one of these type of portfolios, there's like 3 categories that when you do one of these things. One is basically called a venture. So venture is I'm doing something to add a product, or like a new product that doesn't exist now. I'm transforming the business, as it says here. The other one would be growth, which means keep the same products and customers that I have, but get more customers. And then the core thing is running the business. Well, you can kind of look at this little chart, and they took IT section, but it doesn't necessarily have to be IT portfolio categories, because this would be applicable to each one of them: HR and marketing, materials, whatever. So the non-discretionary costs, meaning that I need this money to run the business. There's no question here. But here I have to go get some money and say I want to grow the business or produce a new product for the business. And so these 2 things, these discretionary costs, is where you have to go convince someone. And so convincing them, you can't just go in and say, I think I want to go into the gaming console business. What do you guys think? Give me $1 million. It don't work that way. I mean, you need a business plan. You need lots and lots of stuff to be able to convince people to do one of these projects. So one of the things we talked about at the very beginning was, this whole thing about what is the goal, the measurable goal. What is the objective of this thing? I want to enter the game console market, and I want to have 20% stake in the market by year 2. Okay, that would be an excellent goal that you could measure. Cool. All right, and that would definitely be in the middle of one of these guys, both venture and growth. The next thing they talk about is Microsoft had produced this document. It's a little old, but anyway, it's their PMP Solutions Guide, and I'm not going to go through the entire freaking thing, but basically it's just a guide talking about how project portfolio management. I'm going to put this in the lecture notes, and so you might want to just poke through some of this. It's got some good stuff. Now, obviously it's from Microsoft, so it kind of reads like a commercial about, here's a strategic business need, and here's how our products satisfy that need. Okay, I'll admit that, all right? But they basically talk about all the things that their software that can do to help you do the things that you need to be done for a project. Anyway, resource constraint analysis. I mean, this is some good stuff. And one of the reasons I want you to kind of look at this example is because we're not going to get all that deep. I mean, I wish we could get way, way, way deep into this. We're gonna give it a good college try, but we're not going to get all the way there. Okay, so kind of just peruse through that document. It's a pretty good document. Okay, the next thing you talk about on page 22 is the roles of a project manager. So there's a job description, or some examples of job descriptions. If you go to page 23, they have a couple of pretty cool examples there. And I'm just going to read one because I don't want to bore you guys by reading stuff. But I just picked the middle one there. Project manager for a computer system firm. Works independently within established practices to assist the development and implementation process of projects involving department, venture capital, blah, 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 blah. Coordinates with internal, external clients to gather business requirements and coordinate plans, monitors projects, blah, 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 blah. Okay, the point is that these are some good things. I would recommend you spend a little bit of time reading those little bullet lists on what kind of things people expect project managers to do, like in a job description. There's a suggested skills section coming up next, and I'll admit the first one of their suggested skills is clearly a plug to the Project Management Institute, but I'll forgive them for that. But hang on, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, so this is probably a good place to stop. We'll pick you guys up again in just a few.